Good evening.
Good evening.
You know, I used to ride stick horses, and I was just thinking I come hobbling across here and my old horse is way back, and I can't hardly walk, so I won't use it in my story tonight. I was raised out here on Highway 26, and my mama was the sweetest little woman in the world, but she had a flaw in her character. She had 6 kids, and she would laugh if you got hurt or something scared you. You know, Mother just thought everything was funny, except the way I behaved. But we slept in a room Daddy had built onto our house, and we called it the new room. Big old room with 2 double beds, and built a washroom around the corner and a shower and all that stuff. We was uptown when he built that room. 2 or 3 of the kids had left so he could afford to have a room. But anyway, I was in there sleeping one night, and we used to joke. We used to joke about we hung meat in there in the wintertime and baked biscuits in that room in the summertime. There wasn't no insulation and nothing. And I remember laying up in that bed, and I stuck my arm through the bedstead and put it in the window behind me. And my hand felt a breeze coming through that screen. And I was thinking, man, if I could get my head up there and let that cool wind blow across my forehead and around my ears and neck, I was sweating. It was terrible. If I could just get a little breeze. And so I went to trying to get my head through them little rails. That little bedstead had a rail sticking up on it, you know, about that far apart, just a little bit narrower than my head was, especially with my big ears. So I went to working on that bedstead and pulling and pushing with my head, and eventually I got one hand above my head and one on the other side below it, and I got just enough bend in that thing. I popped my head through. And oh man, I pushed it back there, and I got my pillar and worked in there and put under my head. And Daddy always took us over here to Bobback Wheels. Excuse me. He took us over and got us a GI haircut. That's what we got for 75 cents. And that hair was just long enough it was sticking through the screen about a half inch. It rode out a little bit. And I went to sleep with that breeze blowing across my face. And sometime later in the night, a storm blew in, and the wind was blowing pretty hard, and it was lightning flashing. And I was laying there, and I didn't believe in apparitions or haints. You know, I didn't think there was much of that. Of course, I didn't do a whole lot of thinking anyway. I was a little old boy, and all of a sudden something got me by the hair. They grabbed my hair, that apparition did, and went to pulling on it. And it woke me up. And I twisted around, and my mama grew her old hair real long, beautiful. And it was blowing in that wind, and she had an old floppy gown on, and it was blowing. And I remember I twisted around and looked behind me, and she was still hanging on part of my hair. And I looked there, and that was the scariest thing I ever seen in my life. She had left her dentures in the cup in there by her bed, you know, and just got up to get some clothes off the line because that storm was blowing in. And look here, I went to jumping and trying to get away from there, and I forgot that I had poked my head through that bars on that bed. Seriously. And I bounced and screamed, and my brother was over across the room in his double bed, and it scared him. He went to screaming worse than I was screaming, and it sounded terrible, I'm sure, but I was scared. It scared the devil out of me, and I went to flouncing and a kicking and a knocking, and somehow or another I got the mattress on the floor out from under me on them screams, and I had moved that bed 4 or 5 foot away from the window, and I was tore up, y'all. Back of them bones behind the ears, they was in a mess. And I was skinned on that springs on that bed. I had skinned myself, and I was jerking and snatching and bucking and screaming. And my brother was screaming louder than me. And it woke Daddy up. And he come in there, and just about time he opened the old door to come in, I come loose from that dadgum bed. Said, I don't know how I got my head out of there, but I went off the back of that bed and hit in the floor like to kill me. I was hurting all over. And Daddy come in and says, what in the devil's wrong with you boys? What's the matter in here? What's going on? And I was, Daddy, as a banshee had me, and it about pulled my head slam off. I had forgotten about poking my head through them bars. But you know, Daddy said, I ain't never heard such a racket. You boys ain't supposed to be scared of nothing like that. And I said, Daddy, that was real. I saw it. And look at him. And I said, man, I'm in trouble. I said, I ain't never sleeping in here by myself again or with nobody. And Daddy told me, he said, listen, boys. And Mama was sitting down. She had propped down on them steps. We had some concrete steps and went down out of that room right by my bed. And she got so tickled she couldn't stand up. And she was laying back on them steps, caterwauling and laughing. It was the funniest thing in the world. And Daddy walked there and jerked that door open. And I didn't want him to, but he did. And he said, Mary, what are you doing? And she couldn't get her breath. She said that was the funniest racket she ever heard in her life. All of us screaming, Daddy in there trying to calm us down. And she laughed and she liked to choke me about to death. But you know, I was sore for a week behind my ears. I don't know if y'all got knots behind your ears, but I do now. I didn't know before, but I still got big old knots behind my ears. And the next morning, they was particular. I was a slouchy little old boy out of the rest of them. The rest of my brother and sister combed their hair and brushed their teeth, you know, and did all the stuff they're supposed to, and I didn't care much about all that. And I got up the next morning, and before I could go out to breakfast, I needed to comb my hair. And I walked in that bathroom and picked me up a comb, and I reached up. This ain't no joke. I don't tell nothing but the truth. I reached up to comb the top of my head, my hair, and I couldn't reach my head. I had stretched my neck so long, I couldn't reach the top of my head. And I said, I ain't about to get slapped around with this sore head. And I said, I got to figure out some way to comb my hair. So I was a really smart kid. Some of y'all folks went to school with me, and you know I was brilliant, you know. And I sat there and did a little plane geometry, and maybe it's my algebra, I don't. But anyhow, I figured out all I had to do to reach the top of my head was kneel down. So I kneeled down on my knees, and I was able to reach the top of that head, and I combed it, went on out and ate my breakfast. And that's the truth, I'm telling y'all. I may have stretched that neck thing a little bit, but most of it's the truth.